I've always believed that land remembers. You walk it long enough, till it, sow it, lose boots in its mud and find them a season later. Land takes note of who treats it right. That's why it damn near broke my heart when I saw tire tracks carved clean through my alfalfa field. Not mudding marks either. Thin, shallow grooves, clean as a whistle, like someone had driven through a living thing without so much as a how do you do. I stood at the edge of it, early morning light stretching long over the ridgeline, thermos of coffee in one hand, dog at my feet. Diesel, my border collie, tilted his head like even he couldn't believe it. City tires, I muttered. Low profile. Probably electric. I gave the ground a little sniff. Odd thing I do when something feels off. Sure enough, the faint scent of ozone and perfume hung in the air. Expensive perfume. Something with a French name and a price tag to match. I didn't have to guess long. That afternoon, just as the sun was kissing the tops of my windmill blades, I saw it. A white Tesla, sleek as a seal and just as slippery-looking, crept along the gravel road that skirted my land. Except this time, it didn't stop at the HOA gate like everyone else. It slowed, signal blinking like it owned the place, and turned straight into my field. There she was. Karen. Not a Karen. The Karen. President of the HOA over in the Ridgeview Estates, the new development folks up the hill put in last year. All boxy glass houses and fake grass lawns, trying to act rustic with their reclaimed barnwood mailboxes and fairy light. They don't smell like cows or carry any calluses. I don't trust a single one of them. Karen had the kind of sunglasses you wear to shield yourself from consequences, and the kind of attitude you could hear through a windshield. She was talking on the phone, waving one hand as she drove through my crops like she was Moses parting the Red Sea. I set down my mug, whistled for Diesel, and walked out to meet her where she was pulling up alongside my barn, like she'd been invited. She rolled down her window halfway. Not enough for flies to get in, just enough for disdain to leak out. "Hey there," she said in that syrupy sweet tone people use when they're about to say something rude. "I hope you don't mind. I've been using your field as a shortcut. The Ridgeview gate's been acting up and this way's just so much quicker." I squinted at her. "This is my alfalfa." "Oh," she said, glancing around like the green rose might offend her. "Is that what this is? I just figured it was open space." "It's food," I said flatly. "For cattle." "You're crushing it." She gave a little shrug and laughed. "Well, I'm sure there's plenty. It's not like I'm taking anything." I could feel my jaw start to tighten, but I held it. I've learned over the years that city folks, especially the HOA type, think land is just decoration until someone fences it off and puts a sign on it. I used to think explaining would fix that. I don't anymore. Still, I gave it one try. "I work this field," I said. "I plant, grow, harvest. Every pass you make in that electric coffin of yours costs me money." She tilted her head like a confused poodle. "You mean you actually farm this?" I just stared. "Oh," she said again. "Well, I'll try to be careful next time. Anyway, I'm already late to Pilates." And just like that, she drove off, back across my rows, tires humming like some smug robot bee. That night, I walked the field again. The damage was worse than I thought. Deep ruts in the soft patches, young sprouts flattened like they'd been steamrolled. Diesel walked behind me, sniffing the tire marks like a bloodhound looking for a reason. "Tell you what, boy," I said, crouching to touch one of the crushed stems. "We're gonna fix this the way Grandma used to fix things, with cows." He wagged his tail like he already knew what I meant. But I'm getting ahead of myself. See, this wasn't a one-time thing. Over the next week, Karen drove through my land 3 more times. Never once asked permission. Never once offered to repair the damage. Just glided through like the land was hers, like I was some quaint background character in her luxury SUV life. One morning, I left a note stuck to a wooden post at the entrance she kept using. Big letters. "Private property. Keep out." Next day, she'd moved the post and driven around it. Like it was a suggestion, not a boundary. The thing is, I'd already tried going through official channels. I called the Ridgeview HOA office. They put me on hold for 18 minutes and then told me that easement disputes weren't within their jurisdiction. When I explained there wasn't an easement, just my field, they recommended I hire a mediator. I asked if their mediator knew what alfalfa was. They hung up. So I gave up trying to reason with them. I decided to teach Karen a lesson in boundaries the old-fashioned way. With hooves, mooing, and enough manure to make a Tesla weep. You ever hear a cow sigh? It's one of the most peaceful sounds in the world. Like the earth itself is taking a nap. I spent the next few days preparing my little surprise. Fencing off the area just right. Getting the gate hinges oiled. Called in a favor from my cousin Clyde, who was moving some head of cattle up from his place 2 counties over. He was more than happy to let a few dozen of them take a detour through my field. Said they could use the fresh grazing. Said Karen could use a fresh attitude. And I had a feeling she was about to get both. It didn't sit right with me, the way she dismissed it all, my crops, my work, my words, as if they were just scenery in the background of her busy little luxury life. I've been on this land longer than Ridgeview's had a zip code, and I'll still be here long after their quartz countertops crack and their Bluetooth doorbells rust. But I figured I'd try one last time. Not because I thought it'd change anything, no sir, but because my mama raised me to speak plain before swinging heavy. I wanted to give her the chance to do the right thing, even if her kind usually couldn't recognize the right thing unless it came gift-wrapped and branded. So the next time I saw her, right around 8:40 a.m. on a Thursday like clockwork, I was ready. She came sailing down the gravel road in that white Tesla, probably running late to one of those yoga classes where everyone pretends stretching and gossiping is exercise. I stepped out onto the field entrance before she could turn in. Wore my clean flannel. Didn't bring Diesel this time. Didn't want her calling animal control if he barked wrong. Just me and my hat, standing between her and her shortcut. She slowed down, confused at first. Then the window came down, and there she was again, in all her HOA glory. Hair too blonde to be real, lips too stiff to smile naturally, nails so long they probably had their own zip code. "Oh hey, farmer guy, right?" she said, like we were pals. "Name's Joe," I said evenly. "And I need you to stop driving through my field." She blinked. "Wait, seriously? I thought we talked about this." "We did," I said. "And I told you it was my alfalfa field. You're wrecking it. But it's just plants. I mean, it's not like it's someone's garden or whatever. It's wild." I actually let out a small laugh. Couldn't help myself. "Ma'am, that wild plant is feed. Grows through months of work. You're not just flattening weeds, you're crushing income. You wouldn't drive through a bakery and say the flour didn't matter." She rolled her eyes so hard I could hear it. "Look, I understand that this is your thing. But the HOA gates have been malfunctioning, and honestly, your field is just more convenient. And convenience," I said slowly, "don't give you ownership." She scoffed. "Oh my God. You sound like one of those old-timey ranchers in a movie or something. Do you even know how petty this sounds?" I stepped forward, resting both hands on my belt. "Petty is ignoring someone telling you to stay off their land. Petty is knocking over my no trespassing sign like it's a lawn gnome. Petty is thinking your time's worth more than mine." She folded her arms and tilted her head like I was some charity case that didn't know any better. "Well, if it's that big a deal, maybe you should put up a fence." I smiled. "You'll see one soon." She squinted, suspicious. "Is that a threat?" "No ma'am," I said calmly. "It's a promise." Then I stepped aside, not because I was letting her through, but because I knew she'd do it anyway. She huffed, revved that silent car like it was a Mustang, and rolled through again, wheels pressing deep into the dirt, over fresh shoots trying to grow. I watched her drive off, not angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of the noise people like her bring to a life that runs best quiet. She never did hear what the land was saying under her tires. but the cows would. Later that day, I called Clyde again. "You still hauling those heifers up to Aberdeen this week?" "Yup," he said. "Got a dozen in the trailer now, chewing cud and judging me. Mind stopping off here first? I got a patch of field that could use some hoof traffic, and maybe a little fertilizer." Clyde laughed so hard he dropped the phone. By Friday afternoon, the field had changed. Clyde showed up with 14 head of cattle, mixed bunch, mostly Herefords, big brown-eyed beasts with attitudes somewhere between sleepy and slightly offended. We unloaded them right into the field that Karen liked to drive through. They took to it quick, munching alfalfa like it was fresh candy, and napping in the sun. I rigged a simple electric wire around the edge, low enough not to block the view from the house, high enough to make any future shortcuts complicated. The shortcut had officially become a cow pasture. And let me tell you, nothing says, "You're not welcome," quite like a 1,200-pound heifer standing directly in front of a Tesla with zero intention of moving. The next morning, I waited. 8:42 a.m., like always, here came Karen. She looked distracted, probably talking to her smartwatch or giving Alexa orders through her windshield. She didn't see the wire or the cows until she was halfway in. Then she slammed the brakes. One of the heifers, a sassy girl I'd named Buttercup, was standing right in the path, chewing slowly like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. Karen honked once, like the cow had a driver's license and would politely pull aside. Buttercup just stared. Karen rolled down her window, leaned out, and shouted, "Shoo! Moo! Whatever!" The cows didn't move. I was watching from my porch, sipping hot coffee and scratching Diesel behind the ears. He was watching too, tail flicking slowly. Both of us just soaking in the awkwardness. Karen got out of the car, heels clicking on dry soil. She took 2 steps and immediately gagged. Apparently her Tesla had landed square in the middle of what I like to call the fertilizer zone. Cows don't care where they go, and they'd been generous. "Oh my God, it stinks out here!" she shrieked, hopping back in like the dirt had teeth. She tried to back out, but one of the steers had wandered behind her car, tail swishing. She was trapped in a sea of livestock, noise, and smells her HOA brochures never warned her about. She never drove through again. That day marked the last time her white Tesla crossed my fence line. She still drives by sometimes on the road, nose turned up like she smells something rotten, but that shortcut? Dead and buried. Or, in this case, grazed and fertilized. And you know what? Buttercup still hangs out near that edge. I think she likes the spot. Maybe she remembers too, remembers the noise, the trespass, the woman who thought she could just rewrite the land to suit her needs. Turns out, cows don't take kindly to shortcuts either. I figured that was the end of it. Most folks, after getting boxed in by a herd of cows and nearly reverse parking their $70,000 electric status symbol into a puddle of fresh manure, would reconsider their route. Maybe take the long way, roll the windows up, think about their life choices. But Karen? She didn't take the hint. She called a meeting. Now, I'm not part of the Ridgeview Estates HOA. I don't live in a neighborhood with matching fences, cookie-cutter houses, or bylaws about mailbox height. I live on land my great-grandfather worked with mules and sweat, but I am technically adjacent to their private road. That little sliver of my field, where Karen had been carving ruts for weeks, runs right alongside the back gate of their subdivision. So when I got a certified letter, sealed with some pompous gold foil sticker and packed tighter than a preacher's Sunday sermon, I knew she wasn't done. I opened it on the porch with Diesel curled up beside me and a fresh cup of percolator coffee in hand. Inside, a formal request to address community concerns at the upcoming Ridgeview Estates HOA board meeting. According to the letter, unauthorized livestock activity was disrupting the visual serenity and lowering the property value experience for Ridgeview homeowners. I just stared at it for a long second. Livestock activity? I muttered. They act like buttercups throwing keggers in their driveway. Diesel groaned like he agreed. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I'd never been to one of their meetings. Figured if they had something to say to me, best I show up and hear it firsthand. Plus, I admit, there's something amusing about watching people try to argue about land while wearing loafers that never touched dirt. The meeting was held in their clubhouse, which looked more like a wine bar that lost its liquor license. Faux stone columns, minimalist furniture, cold air so heavily scented it nearly choked me with lavender and entitlement. There were about 20 of them, gathered around a long glossy table with branded pens and bottled water from a glacier-sounding company. At the head of the table was Karen, in a blazer that probably cost more than my tractor's transmission. She smiled when I walked in. The kind of smile coyotes give chickens. "Oh, Mr. Joe," she said, like we were old friends. "So glad you could join us. Please, sit. We just have a few small concerns." I nodded politely and stayed standing. A man with a comb-over and a Bluetooth earpiece cleared his throat. "Mr. Joe, as you're aware, your recent agricultural expansion has encroached on the shared aesthetic of our neighborhood." I blinked. "Shared aesthetic?" "Yes," he continued, gesturing to a pie chart on the TV that showed landscape complaints as one big purple wedge. "Several residents have reported unpleasant visuals, strange smells, and aggressive bovine presence near the Ridgeview back gate." "I see," I said. "So, you don't like the cows?" Karen laughed nervously. "It's not personal, of course. We just believe their presence violates the unspoken harmony between your land and ours." I tilted my head. "The harmony you had when you were cutting through my alfalfa?" Silence. Then Karen cleared her throat. "Well, that was a misunderstanding. The gate malfunctioned. You don't have signage. The GPS rerouted." "I did have signage," I said. "You moved it 3 times. The Bluetooth guy leaned in. "Regardless, we're hoping you can relocate the animals and remove the fence." I folded my arms. "So, let me get this straight. You trespassed on my land, damaged my crop, ignored every warning I gave you, and now that I've legally fenced off my own property and put livestock on it, you're filing a complaint." Another long pause. Karen gave me that practiced smile again. "Look, Joe, I know you're probably used to doing things a certain way out here, but this community has standards." I nodded slowly. "And I got mine too. One of M's respecting property lines." She leaned forward. "Joe, be reasonable. These people pay HOA dues. We have expectations." I grinned. "That's your problem. See, I don't pay dues. I don't follow bylaws. I don't even belong to your HOA. I belong to this land. And it seems to me like you're the one trespassing." Karen's smile faltered. "So, you're not willing to compromise?" "Oh, I'm more than willing," I said, pulling a folded printout from my jacket. "Here's a quote from a land surveyor. And another from a lawyer who specializes in property rights. I figured this meeting might go this way." Her eyes widened slightly as I handed them over. "Bottom line is," I continued, "this is my field. My fence is legal. The cows are staying. And if you touch my land again, I'll do more than file a complaint. I'll file charges." After that, things got real quiet in the Ridgeview boardroom. No more charts. No more scented platitudes. Just a bunch of people realizing that their gated utopia didn't extend past their boundary markers. I left before they could regroup. Tipped my hat on the way out. "Y'all take care now," I said. "Watch out for the cows." The next day, I noticed something. A new sign went up at the Ridgeview back gate. "No entry, private road, violators will be reported." Guess they finally learned how signs work. Karen still drives by sometimes. Slower now. Careful not to make eye contact. Once, she even stopped her car a good 10 feet from the fence, just watching Buttercup munching alfalfa like royalty. I think she finally figured out that land can't be bullied. That nature doesn't yield to gate codes or board meetings. Out here, the rules are older than her HOA and a hell of a lot simpler. Respect the land. Respect your neighbor. Or deal with the cows. Once the HOA made it clear they weren't gonna take responsibility or accountability, I figured there was no harm in leaning all the way in. If a few cows grazing in my alfalfa ruffled their feathers that much, I wondered what they'd think of a full-on pasture operation. Not just a couple curious heifers, but a proper, mooing, cud-chewing, bell-ringing herd. See, I've always kept my land quiet. Half out of habit, half out of respect for the balance out here. You don't overgraze, don't plant more than you can water, don't build anything taller than the wind can handle. But lately, with folks like Karen moving in, folks who think land is just a view, they'd turned my quiet into a weakness, a target. So I decided to let the land speak a little louder. First, I called Clyde again. Told him I wanted to rotate in a second group of cattle and set up the southern pasture full-time. Clyde chuckled into the phone and said, "Well, Joe, you sure you want to escalate?" I replied, "No escalation. Just expansion." Clyde understood. He's an old-school cattleman like me. Knows that sometimes you fight back without ever lifting a finger, just by letting nature run its course in the most inconvenient places. We arranged for 28 head total. Half Herefords, half Charolais. Good mix. They arrived that Saturday, tail flicking and hooves stomping like they were ready to settle the score personally. Next came the infrastructure. I spent a few long days running fence lines, digging in steel posts with my auger, and wiring up solar-powered gate. Built a shaded watering station near the barn and laid down gravel paths where the mud pooled deepest. While I was at it, I installed an old-fashioned bell, one I salvaged from a decommissioned schoolhouse years ago, right in the middle of the field. The kind that rings loud and proud every time the wind catches it just right. My neighbor Dave from 2 farms over stopped by mid-installation. He leaned on the gate, sipping from a thermos. "You ringing in a new church or just trying to raise HOA blood pressure?" I shrugged. "Why not both?" By the next week, my field had transformed. What used to be a quiet stretch of green, good for grazing, sure, but mostly undisturbed, was now alive. Cows lowed at sunrise. Birds circled above. Even had a couple of goats sneak in from Clyde's trailer, which I didn't mind. They helped trim the edges. I didn't just let it grow, I let it thrive. Put up wind chimes. Installed an old metal swing I found in the shed, right near the fence line. Let the chickens roam closer to the gate than usual. Every morning, I'd come out with Diesel and watch the sun rise over a sea of livestock, peaceful and content, except when a Tesla slowed on the gravel road. Then the cows got interested. It's a funny thing, really. Once they get used to people, cows start noticing patterns. And I swear on Grandma's best pie dish, my herd recognized Karen's car. The first time she drove by after the expansion, Buttercup and 2 of the steers wandered right up to the fence and just stood there, watching. No barking, no charge, just slow chewing and judgmental stares. Karen froze. You'd think she'd stumbled into a standoff. She backed up, slowly, then sped off, tires spitting gravel. Of course, the HOA couldn't help themselves. I got another letter the following week, printed on heavy cardstock like they were mailing a wedding invitation. This one had a new tone, less condescending, more desperate. It read, "Mr. Joe, we understand you are within your rights to utilize your land as you see fit. However, we urge you to consider the overall aesthetic impact your recent agricultural intensification has had on our resident. We propose a mutual respect agreement where you agree to maintain livestock no closer than 300 feet from the Ridgeview perimeter." I almost choked on my coffee when I read that. Agricultural intensification. Like they were allergic to saying cows. I penned a reply on lined notebook paper, just for contrast. "Dear HOA, I appreciate your concern, but I reckon you've mistaken my land for one of your landscaping projects. My cows are grazing where the alfalfa grows best. I suggest your residents get used to the smell of honest work. Warm regards, Joe." I folded it, tucked it into the original envelope, and walked it down myself. Slipped it right into their community Dropbox. I heard they held an emergency board meeting that night. Lot of loud voices and the smell of essential oils in the air. It didn't take long for word to spread. Folks from nearby farms started stopping by more often, bringing pie, tools, or just company. A few of them had stories of their own, HOAs trying to tell them how tall their barns could be, or complaining about rooster noise at sunrise. This whole valley used to be dirt roads and handshake deals, Dave told me one night as we watched the herd bed down. Now they act like we're the nuisance. They moved here for peace and quiet, I said, but forgot we were the ones making it peaceful in the first place. A few weeks passed. Karen stopped driving by entirely. I heard she started taking the long way around the subdivision, even had her Tesla rerouted with custom GPS tags. That made me chuckle. The cows? They kept on grazing. Didn't care about neighborhood politics. They just wanted grass, sun, and space to roam. Sometimes I'd sit out there on that old swing, bell clanging soft in the breeze, watching the sky turn gold behind a line of slow-moving cattle. Diesel would rest his chin on my boot, eyes half closed, like the land itself was breathing again. Funny thing is, I never planned to run a full pasture. Wasn't in the books for this season. But it's working. The animals are happy. The land's richer. And I sleep easier knowing my field's being used the way it was always meant to be. You can fence off nature for a while. You can pave over it, put up signs, assign bylaws and buzzwords. But nature doesn't care about your committee meetings. It remembers who respects it. And it sure as hell doesn't forget who doesn't. By the time spring rolled fully into summer, the pasture had become something of a local attraction. Not the flashy kind, mind you, no brochures, no tickets, no influencers posing in straw hats for pretend farm photo shoots. Just cows. Real ones. Doing cow things. They grazed. They mooed. They fertilized. Sometimes they stared at passing cars like they were calculating stock prices. It was peaceful. Honest. Right. And for the most part, everyone learned to coexist. Except Karen. See, while most folks adjusted, either by rerouting their daily drives or learning the difference between cow pies and landscaping stones, Karen still hadn't let it go. I knew that because every few days, I'd find a new little sign near the fence line. Nothing official. Just passive-aggressive HOA-grade decorations. One week it was a tiny plastic picket fence stuck in the dirt, right where Buttercup liked to nap. Another day, a solar-powered air freshener tied to my fence post. Lavender-scented, naturally. Then came the sound machine. I found it one evening, a little gray speaker buried behind a row of shrubs, set to emit high-frequency chirp. Probably meant to keep wildlife away, but all it did was irritate Clyde's goats and make the cows pace at night like anxious toddlers. I turned it off, left it hanging from the fence, and tied a note to it that said, "Return to sender. Cows aren't going anywhere." I wouldn't have called it a feud. More like a quiet war of lifestyles. One side believed in electric fences, handmade feed, and rising with the sun. The other side believed in noise complaints, scented air, and control disguised as community values. But things stayed calm enough, until Karen made her big mistake. One Monday morning, cloudy, humid, with that thick air that sticks to your neck, I heard a noise outside that didn't belong. A slow, grinding hum. Electric. Tires on gravel, but not in any kind of hurry. I stepped out onto the porch with Diesel, who immediately sat upright and growled low in his throat. It was Karen's Tesla, creeping down the edge of my field again. Not driving through this time. No, I think she'd learned her lesson on that front. But she was moving slow, like she was inspecting something. Taking video, maybe. I couldn't see her face behind the tinted glass, but I could feel the smugness radiating off that car like it ran on ego. She pulled up right to the edge of the pasture, close enough for the front bumper to nudge the wire fencing. Not hard. Just a little touch. A little statement. What she didn't count on was Daisy. Now, Daisy is a big girl. One of the Cherolet. White as a snowdrift and nearly 1,500 pounds of muscle, milk, and curiosity. And she hates humming sounds. Always has. Vacuum cleaners, drones, RC cars, you name it. Something about that high-pitched whir makes her snort like a freight train. So when Karen's Tesla rolled up, humming softly, Daisy looked up from her patch of clover and charged. Not a full stampede. Just a determined, annoyed trot with purpose. Karen didn't notice at first. She was too busy fiddling with her phone or trying to adjust the camera angle. But by the time she looked up and saw a wall of annoyed cow barreling her way, it was too late to back up. Daisy didn't break the fence. Cherolees are stubborn, not reckless, but she hit the wire just right, causing the whole front row of the herd to shuffle forward, eyes locked on the car like it owed them rent. And then it happened. Buttercup, bless her curious heart, licked the side of the Tesla. Big, wet, full-tongue swipe across the driver's side window. Left a trail of grass-flavored spit and alfalfa bits right across the glass. Karen screamed. I could hear it from the porch. The car revved. Tires spun in the gravel. In her panic, she backed up too fast, clipped the edge of a feed bin I'd moved near the gate, and tore a chunk of decorative trim clean off her rear bumper. She peeled out of there like she'd seen a ghost, leaving behind a Tesla-sized arc of tire ruts and one very smug-looking cow. I didn't laugh. Not right away. But Diesel did this little chuff noise, kind of like a dog's version of a chuckle, and I couldn't hold it in. I walked down, patted Daisy's head, and said, "Well, girl, I guess that settles who's queen of the pasture." She snorted and went right back to grazing. I figured that would be the last of it. But Karen, being Karen, had one more play. That afternoon, I got a visit from someone in a navy polo with Ridgeview Estates enforcement officer stitched on the chest like he was part of a mall cop militia. Clipboard in hand. Name tag said Brent. He gave me a rehearsed smile and said, "Sir, we've received a complaint about livestock harassment and vehicle damage." I cut him off. "Your HOA doesn't govern this land." "Well, technically. This is Section 42, Lot C. Been in my family since 1928. No annexation. No jurisdiction. No HOA oversight." He blinked. "Oh. Also," I added, "I've got footage from my game cam of the whole thing. Shows the car approaching the fence, touching it, and the cows staying on their side. No contact. Unless you count licking." Brent paused. "Licking?" I nodded. "She tasted alfalfa. It's not a crime." He stared at me for a long moment, then just said, "Right? Okay. I'll file this as resolved." I nodded. "Appreciate it." And with that, Brent climbed back into his little HOA-branded golf cart and zipped away, probably back to a meeting about mailbox uniformity. The cows stayed. The pasture thrived. And Karen? Well, her Tesla never came near again. I heard through the grapevine she started parking on the far side of the subdivision and walking the extra quarter-mile to her yoga class, just to avoid the pasture. One of the HOA dads started calling the route the cow walk. The name stuck. Now and then, I still catch sight of her peeking over the Ridgeview fence, sunglasses on, arms crossed, probably still dreaming of the day she could drive wherever she pleased without consequences. But the land remembers. And so do the cows. And so do I. Funny thing is, I didn't start this out looking for a fight. All I wanted was to grow my alfalfa in peace. But when someone drives through your field like it's their shortcut to Whole Foods, and then tries to fine you for standing your ground, well, sometimes peace comes only after you let the herd do the talking. So if there's a lesson in all this, it's simple. Respect the land. Because if you don't, it might just fight back. And it won't use horns or hooves. It'll use cows.